Welcome to the Protein MB podcast. I'm Jordan Sisiwa. We've got Chris Bunio on today from TheoryMesh, and I have been waiting to do this one. I love my job and I love doing these podcasts because I get a free education on what is going on in agriculture. And in the case of Chris and his team, not only just in agriculture, but an amazing resource on everything from value chain to things that are going on in sustainability. So I'm not going to take too much time. Chris, welcome to the podcast, and I'm going to ask you, because we've got a lot to get to, jump right in and tell us what TheoryMesh is.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Jordan. Thank you, and thanks for having me here. I'm excited to have this conversation today. So I'm Chris Bunio, CEO, co-founder of TheoryMesh. We're a Winnipeg-based company, decidedly Winnipeg-based. We moved back to Winnipeg after many years abroad. But TheoryMesh is really focused on digitizing agriculture and food supply chains, and it's a big, broad thing, and it really starts with taking a look at how data can help inform everything from how we grow food to how we process food, to how we consume food, and then all the technology that goes in between, a farm and food companies and all these other places. I come from more of a technology background, so I, was a developer from my very early age. I started writing code when I was 8, so I'm definitely a tech guy at heart. And before starting TheoryMesh, I spent nearly 20 years with Microsoft, and I've always been kind of in and around the tech industry. And TheoryMesh is really our work to bring a lot of technology, data management, all those different pieces into an industry where there's a lot of data, there's a lot of use of data today, and we think there's an opportunity to do more with that data, to look at sustainability and all these other areas. So I'm super excited every day that I get to wake up and think about this and think about the next implication. And I love talking about it. So I'm going to end up throwing a lot of words out here, Jordan. So definitely want to make sure that we're staying on point on this one.
And this is what we wanted from you, because I don't think, I guess if you're in the ag community, what's available data-wise, but I don't know if most people understand that with the way farm equipment is now, it can spit figures out at you as to emissions that are being put out there. Yeah. We can track the usage of pesticides, fungicides, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You can get to the minutia detail, what goes into the feed of the ingredients in your food, and track that the whole way down. Yeah. So let's talk about how far someone can go as a consumer and as a producer, how far you can go to show where your product comes from.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, Jordan. One thing that's happened with an unrelenting push has been digitization of stuff on the farm. You can't walk onto a farm today that's bought equipment within the last 10, 15 years without it being essentially a data machine. Any new tractor is generating millions of data points a day. Any new feed system generates data points. New robotic milkers for dairy cows. Anytime that you walk onto a farm, there is data all around you, and that data is being used for very discrete things. Like when you operate your tractor, it's typically being used to look at the performance and the actions behind that tractor. You'll use customized seeding plans, customized fertilizer application plans generated by that data, and that's a very focused way to use that data. What we're seeing now is the opportunity to look at that data in a slightly different way and say, well, yeah, I've got this data that's telling me how to apply fertilizer onto my field, but does that data tell me something else? And that's where we're sort of exploring this idea that data has got more value than just what was originally collected for. If we take a look at the world today, it's pretty hard with COP28 going on in Dubai to not be thinking about sustainability and the environment and all these different pieces. And you're seeing so much more awareness and so much more interest in what's happening with the environment. And agriculture and food are part of that mix. Globally, depending on whose numbers you use, agriculture is definitely a part of the emissions the emission space for all countries, and depending on whose numbers you use, it's 10 to 20%. And in that, you've got everything from cows burping and producing methane to fertilizer that goes on fields, and also the food waste and food loss. But all of that, and we're going to kind of ramble around here for a little bit, but that data that we're capturing at the farm level is really the starting point to say, can we make things better? Can we make improvements? Can we do things that are slightly better or slightly more effective than what we're doing today? One of the biggest adopted technologies at the farm level is variable rate application for things like fertilizer. So, for those who are not really, big on the farm side, variable rate lets you create a map of your field and say, I'm going to put, this much fertilizer here and this much herbicide here and this much pesticide here based on what your crops need. And just by having that one technology, you can reduce the amount of, potentially harmful substances that you're putting into the field and putting into food by 10, 20, 30% and get it to the level that you need to grow an effective crop. And just that one practice alone, which is coming up in adoption across farmers, helps to really create a very real environmental impact. And that's kind of a foundational piece. And you build on top of that and you start to see how this data starts to play into all these other areas.
Well, and I want to stay here for a second because, it's funny. I've now been able to do these podcasts for about 6 months. And when I first started, if someone had said to me, what is sustainability? I don't know that I would have varied from the environmental side of it.
Right.
And what you just described to me is now the much more educated Jordan looks at this and says, not only did you just say, we can reduce some of the usages and it's better for the environment, but as a farmer, as somebody looking for sustainability, the other parts of it are financial. So I can now reduce my costs. I can now 100%. Save by not doing these things. So let's talk a little bit about how TheoryMesh gets involved in that front by handing this data over, and all of a sudden you've got someone that can say, I can reduce costs here at multiple points along my chain. How does how good does that feel as a company to be doing that?
Yeah, the interesting thing is that we didn't start by thinking about this problem, but what we found is, because we connect data across the supply chain, so we connect farm data and what happened on the farm with what's happening for food companies, you start to find all of these individual places where there's cost, and there's cost comes from things not being optimized. So if we think about the farm level, the ability to understand and use data to inform what the right practice is to optimize your use of fertilizer, like that's, if you can bring fertilizer costs down, that's good for the farm, it's good for the environment, it's good for everyone. If you can bring pesticides and herbicides down, good for the farm, good for the consumer, good for everyone. So there's a big benefit that happens there. When that crop is coming off the field, right from the field level, you end up with even harvest loss and then post-harvest loss. So there's new technology coming out to help manage how a combine actually is going through a field to make sure that you're losing the minimum amount possible. You're getting as much crop into your hopper and into your grain bins as possible. So you're reducing the waste in that sort of harvest stage. And then as you go into grain bins, again, technology that, robots that will go into your grain bin and stir the grain for you so you don't have rot and you don't have disease forming there. So all this technology that each stage along this way, you think about it as like, that's cool. But at the end of the day, you're actually reducing the loss, you're reducing the waste, and that's got environmental impact because it's not emitting methane, there's no waste there. It's reducing the cost for the farmer or increasing the amount of money that they can get. And across that whole chain, it's got those impacts. And the same thing goes ahead. So if you go into a food company, a food company that's like, let's say you're milling some kind of a product. So you're milling wheat into flour. As that wheat comes in the front door, you want to know what it is, where it came from, what its characteristics are. Because if you get wheat that's too dry or wheat that's too moist or has the wrong protein content, it might change your milling process. So you may, in some cases, get wheat that has a higher waste level as it's going through your milling process. And again, that's creating environmental impact. It's creating a cost impact. So you want to have that awareness. And today, because the food chain tends to be so segregated, We don't have the opportunity to do that. And what we're doing in our platform is creating that connection across the whole chain so you can see those spots where there's opportunity to optimize. And you can see those spots where there is, potentially waste, or there's something that you can optimize through little adjustments to be able to have a more productive supply chain.
Yeah, and now my understanding is this is slowly becoming the standard that not only should we do because it's better for everyone involved, the end user and et cetera, but this is now going to start to become the standard where purchasing, international sales, and banking and financing, you will not be able to be financed if you can't produce some of these numbers. So,
yeah,
what is technology doing there to kind of help the producer, the farmer, speak better to international markets, banks?
Yeah. It's really interesting. Like if you look at legislation rules that are coming out, we've had just a raft of things over the last 6 to 12 months. Canadian banking regulations have changed. California brought out their emissions reporting and the supply chain rules. Europe has EUDR, which is the EU anti-deforestation, and then there's the European Anti-Slavery Acts. So all of these things are requiring companies to be able to provide information that shows that they're in compliance. And if you think about what happens with a farmer, a farmer is growing a crop on a field or raising animals. Today they're just selling it on in the supply chain, so they're not really held to provide information about how they were growing these things. But all of these new regulations require that information to be there and available. So I'll just use the EU example. So in the European Union, anti-deforestation regulation requires certification before you import something into the EU. Okay, so EU is a big market. Second biggest market in the world. I can't remember what's size-wise, but it's a big market. But if you're a canola farmer in Manitoba and you want to sell your canola, even through an intermediary, into the European Union, you're going to need to be able to show that there's no deforestation on your field where you grew that canola. So you're going to have that type of data. You're going to have access to it and be able to share it to your buyers. So that's not going to go. We're not going to get less of that. We're going to get more of that over time. More regulation. More looking for that data. And I think it's important for farms to understand. It's not being done to penalize them or anything like that. It's really with the goal of improving, environmental sustainability as a whole.
Well, and so into that, let's talk about TheoryMesh, because this,
yeah,
it's funny because every time I've met with you or watched you network at some events that we're at and all of this, I don't want to tell you that you're a bad salesman, but you always forget to talk about what you guys do. You're, and I see it, and I get it. You're passionate about what you do. So if I'm sitting here now, I'm looking for solutions.
Yeah.
What are the solutions that are available? What is somebody like TheoryMesh doing? Because like you said, the data points are there.
Yeah.
Who brings them together? Who reads them? And what are they reading?
Yeah, so let me be a good salesperson for myself here, Jordan. Yeah, I appreciate that prompt. So we've got a product called Farm Capture, and that product is really there to organize data at the farm level to be able to, first of all, inform farms of what's happening with their production. So we do multi-source data aggregation from John Deere, Climate Field View, all these different platforms to give them a view of that production for their own purposes. And this helps them to comply with sourcing regulations, help them to comply with certification requirements like organic, and gets them ready to be able to share that information with their supply chain. So if you're a farmer using our platform, generally we're going to help you bring all this data together into one place so you can see it in one place. You'll understand what information you have. You can get a carbon score from your data today in our platform. That's done in real time, and you'll be able to get it ready for sharing with whoever's buying your product in the supply chain. Past that, we've got our food platform called Food Trace. And Food Trace is really built to manage the whole food supply chain. So everything from sourcing and contracting and incoming products through manufacturing right to consumer packaging. And it connects back with that farm data. So you can bring that farm data into the Food Trace platform, all the sustainability and information, everything there that would be your scope 3. Bring that in and manage that and connect it all the way through your manufacturing processes so that you've got a full view of what came in, how it was manufactured into that final food product, and at that food product manage where it's going in terms of your customers. So seeing that full traceability and getting your full environmental footprint. So if you are a food customer and you say, hey, I've got a gluten allergy, so I always talk about gluten because it's near and dear to my heart. What I want to see is I want to see on a package of food that it was tested for gluten, and I want to know where along that supply chain, there was the potential introduction of gluten-bearing components. Today, that's impossible. You can't do that. You can't see it on a package. But with our technology, we can expose that. We can say, it was tested in the manufacturing process. It was tested when the food company received it. It was tested on the field, and show that whole chain and what's actually happening so you can see that it's actually meeting your standard. And that's what we do across the food supply chain.
Yes. And now here's where the next part of this, I'm going to help you be a good salesman as well, is the way that Protein MB and TheoryMesh kind of have come together and found out about each other is, I know for our team it was through the Bioscience Association of Manitoba, as well as Emily. And these are two, as far as it goes for technology, for advancement, for supporting excellence in the province, that's what they do. And give us a little insight to what you've done with both those entities.
Yeah, so since we started TheoryMesh, we've been very, very active in the local Manitoba scene and sort of working with these groups. Emily has been a great partner for us to help us get connected across the industry. We've learned a lot from the Emily team. We've contributed a lot back to the Emily team, and we're one of the groups that's part of the Emily Innovation Farm environment by FCC. So they're testing and technology environment for ag tech companies, and that's a great project to have locally here to help ag tech companies kind of figure out the technology side. So the work with Emily has been fantastic on that front, and with Bioscience Association of Manitoba, we've used that network to learn to work with people and groups in the mix, and really just to make sure that we are staying on top of the issues that are important here locally. Manitoba has a massive biosciences economy component to it. So seeing all the food processing, seeing all of the protein processing, and all that work that's done here through biosciences, we've just stayed closely connected to that community and been able to share the work that we're doing and learning from those companies.
Well, and I think this has been my favorite part of the education. Yeah, like I say, when I sat there, I've never been somebody that thought I'd have to leave Manitoba to excel in life.
Right.
But once I started seeing, the first time Kim Klein, the president, said, "Oh yeah, no, it's a $3 billion industry for medicaments, and it's $700 million comes from here and another billion from here." And then the protein industry itself is a $9 billion industry.
Yeah.
And this, I'm saying billion, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I had no idea up until 6 months and a day ago, basically.
Yeah.
That's who Manitoba is. And like you say, when you're nonchalantly saying, "Oh yeah, we work with BAM and we work with these programs, etc." It's very wild as a homegrown Manitoban to bring that to scale that no other province is superseding us by much, especially when you look at population base, and in this agriculture space and in some of these biotechs, we're not being outshone. So I want to ask you how you got involved. So once you had this great idea of hey, and in your case, as I understand it, it was, I've got a gluten sensitivity. Let's solve the problem.
Yeah.
Track the data. How did you go from I've got an idea to getting involved with some of these places, getting connected to the right streams, and meeting the right people?
Yeah, it's an interesting journey because I'm not from an agriculture or food background. So, like as I mentioned, I'm definitely from a tech background. I'm definitely a tech guy. But within our co-founding team, we brought together the experience of somebody who was with the Canadian Grain Commission for a very, very long time, somebody who's farmer today and work closely with the Manitoba government. So we sort of brought together this group of founders who had a network already in place, and then we used that network to find the right places to go. And I'll tell you, it's we don't brag enough about the types of associations we have in Manitoba. It's a Manitoba problem where we don't brag enough about the great work that's done here. But you will really find like these world-class associations here and world-class industries where we're doing leading-edge work and we're doing things that are punching way above our weight as a province technically. And these different communities and these different groups, we sought out. We actively looked for these groups. We actively got engaged in conversations. We would go from group to group. We have a close connection with the University of Manitoba, which helped open a lot of those doors for us. So we were actively networking and following these threads, and we put that in mind as a strategy, was to get our learning to happen early. Like coming into this, I thought it was going to build some farm stuff, it was going to build some supply chain stuff, it was going to be great, we're going to be fantastic. And as I started digging in and learning, like the amount of space that we can cover with the technology that we've built, and even just in Manitoba. So if we look through, the hundreds of food companies and ag companies in Manitoba, it's a massive landscape to cover, and these are big industries. So we're super happy about the local network and the companies that are here.
Well, and like you're saying, is there some massive international entities that make a home in Manitoba, and what we naturally have that we naturally, again, like you said, don't brag about. Mm-hmm. It is incredible when international companies hear about the space that we have, the land that's available, excuse me as I cough, about the workforce, about the talent, about the resources, the research, and it's just one of those things that gets me as a proud Manitoban getting involved in it, getting to have these conversations. I'm fired up. And so speaking of fired up and about the future, where's TheoryMesh going? Because we'll end off on this front of where you guys plan to see us go.
Yeah. So we're poised in a really great way to just explode here. So we've been working for the last couple of years building our platform and really investing in the technology that we need to get out there. And what we found is that we're in a very unique spot where we do this complete supply chain. We bring AI and blockchain and a bunch of other technology into the space that's not there today. And because we're taking a whole supply chain approach, we've got a unique value proposition for the industry that's spot on with what's happening in the world today. So, if I look at my week, I've got calls with groups in Africa, South America, Europe, Asia, all looking at how we can bring our technology into these other areas to be able to help them track their supply chains, make them more sustainable. Right here in Manitoba, we're looking at how we can help everybody from small players kind of digitize what they're doing today, right up to big companies, getting full scope 1, 2, 3 assessments of their sustainability. So the future is bright and pretty wide open for us, because we're sort of playing in a space where there aren't well-defined solutions today. We've kind of taken this whole supply chain view, which is a bit unique, and applied all this technology and this sustainability view, and we're looking to grow here very quickly over the next few years, and doing it all based in Manitoba.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you one more shout out, because our team at Protein MB has heard about the wonderful stuff that you're doing, not just with the big multi-million-dollar players, but also the support that TheoryMesh is giving to absolutely any farmer that reaches out to you to say, we want to better ourselves and our product and how we farm in Manitoba. So a big shout out, because I know, again, you've been involved with Emily and with BAM, and that is the great thing about Manitoba, is it's still that tight-knit community. So we are at Protein MB. We love seeing you guys succeed with these massive companies, but also make sure that everyone that produces in Manitoba gets the support that they need. So, Chris, we've got to do this again, because you threw out blockchain just like it's you're doing all these things that we're going to have discussions on, and you're going to have to keep us up to date, because agriculture, it's not what people think it is, and it's big in Manitoba. So thanks for your time today.
Perfect. Thanks, Jordan.